Council Kane.
On that, it says that we are spending that 10 grand to maintain the city's position in the compact. So how are we in it before?
Pardon me?
How are we in the compact before? Or how were we paying for a subscription for that before?
I believe it's just come up now as to the ongoing dues. I think we joined about a year ago, and now it's the first round. I think where we have to actually pay our dues to be an ongoing member.
So there's a state-run program?
Yes,
And the state makes you contribute money to share best practices.
that's my understanding.
And what are the ends?
Pardon me?
What are the ends? You said share best practices to certain ends.
I haven't been involved on a day-to-day basis of it. I could bring up Eric Mason, who has been going to the meetings, and what we might gain to benefit from it if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm curious.
You mean council? Through you, Chair. The new compact, we picked two best practices, and ours are job retention and basically job retention and data analysis. And what happens is that we were given a 20,000 grant last year to bring in the new programs. Some of the council and I use Social Explorer, we use a lot. That's helped a lot of grants. Another thing was using those funds, we did a small business tour down in North Quincy, part of the NPC. But basically, in order to stay in the compact, which gives us an increased amount of points on each grant application we submit to the state, we have to maintain those subscriptions that were initially introduced when we signed the contract. The compact going back to the last fiscal year. So by maintaining that $10,000, it increases our likelihood of getting more grants.
So it's like a pay to play.
Yeah, pay to improve. That's it. You gotta have some skin in the game for them to want to help you.
It's just I'm computing here. You have to pay money to have access to grants. It's just interesting. If you're saying that this is a worthwhile expenditure, then
It definitely is. Everybody gets, can apply for the grants, but if it's a grant in the area you're trying to improve, then they give a better increased chance of getting it by maintaining this good standing money on that.
You all set, Council?
No, I just want to ask one question. Well, thank you for explaining this, but in terms of the cost benefit, what to date have you leveraged off by part of this in terms of those grants?
So just last year alone, we got $20,000.
Okay.
Then I worked on a couple of grant applications, some only within the city, some with Quincy College. We tried to go after some of the promise grants and such. I started out with $20,000, and given on what some of the grants the school goes after from the state level, I can do a more in-depth analysis to see who used that Quincy's accreditation. Being the community compact can give you a much better answer, but just projects I worked with alone have been doubled up concentrations.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shirley.
You all set, Council? Council Forrest and Council Kane.
Thank you, through Mr. Chairman. Actually, the Seaport Economic Council has funded a lot of, one of our last grants was $680,000 to the boat ramp at the Housing Maritime Center. One of the first questions, are you a member of the community compact? So add that to your funds leverage.
Yes,
Pretty good number. We'll be applying for another grant with them this summer. So the Seaport, there's one ferry grant also, community compact, that they give you priority for your filings. So we'll see it twice.
I believe it's roughly around $500,000.
No, so 680 was the Housing Maritime Center, and 220?
Plus
It's a 25% cost match, right? So I don't know how you,
Oh, that's good. That's a good point. Yeah.
680 was their money, right?
It's like $350,000 on top of the 20.
Plus the Swan, right? Swan was like 2 something.
Yep. Okay, excellent.
Thanks.
All set, Council
Yep.
Forrest? Council Kane.
Thanks, Eric. Just two other quick questions. I don't know who's going to address this, but the audit of muni accounting, is that the Powers and Sullivan audit?
That's correct.
Okay. And separately, just this line item, it looks like it's been approved. We approved it last year, approved it the year before. Professional/tech, what is that?
It's used for, within the office for whatever might be suitable for that description. We've bought software, we've bought manuals, we've bought training things that might be helpful for people in the office.
Okay, just curious. I didn't know if it was like IT stuff, and if we had a central, we do have a IT budget, didn't know if that was sort of centralized to that, or?
I think each department, well, a lot of the departments, as far as City Hall and administration, have a professional tech budget. It could be used for training, it could be used for the DOR training seminars, sometimes it's $50 fees.
Okay. Thank you.
That type of.
All set, Council King, Council Finn.
Mark, and I'm not gonna cut this because the way my luck goes is that cut this and, you know, all of your professional tech stuff would fall, but, you know, there's $250 for repairs and maintenance that, as far as I can see, is it, you know, it hasn't been used since fiscal 11, or maybe there's only like $3 that's been spent out of it, but.
If we come across one of the machines in our office that we can fix for $250, we're gonna use that. So-
Well, I guess why are you giving trainings across all the city departments in terms of maintenance? Because, you know, it's amazing, but again, $250, I would move approval of this part of this budget.
Okay, motion on the floor to move approval on the motion, Council Yang.
Yes, I just have a question, Mark. So we get the year-to-date budget report that we can sort of take a look at to look at against for the proposed 2017 budgets and then 2018 requested. And I'm just taking a look, under these columns, you have original appropriations, transfers, adjustments, revised budget, year-to-date expended, and then available budget percentage used. And under the salaries here, they don't match what was budgeted for 2017. So for example, Director of Municipal Finance, original appropriations $115,000. 2017 budget was $118,000. So it's just, because these numbers don't match, it's hard to go back and take a look and say, okay, well, how much appropriated is actually spent and what was used? Did they use it to the full extent they needed to? Do we need to cut? Do we need to add? But from a starting point, the numbers don't even match up to begin with. So it's,
Sure.
I'm wondering if you can explain that.
I can answer that, Councilman. It's a timing difference. The adjustments upward to the ones reflected in the budget book simply have not been made within each detailed line of Munis, which your report is coming off of. Eric, in working with Brendan, the consultant with Munis, our employee with Munis, was able to reflect the current 2017 salaries showing a 1% in 16 and 2% in 17. That was an assumption that there would be passage by all of the unions as well as the remaining department heads and admins. So we put what we projected to be the accurate amount in the budget book. Munis is lagging behind. It's just a timing difference where we think we'll have that done within probably 2 weeks. So that if you ran the same report, you'd see the similar amounts.
Okay, and that only applies to the salaries. Are there any other adjustments?
That's correct.
that we need to keep an eye out for?
It was the salaries.
Okay. And as soon as you get those new numbers, you will send us a new budget report that we can review then. Correct?
Sure.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion, Council Forrest?
Just one quick point, maybe John call through to Mark. One of the topics we had talked about, I believe, I think Council Calhoun and I worked with Auditor O'Connor on a resolution, I think in the last session, about optimizing the use of Munis. And so, for example, payroll and cost savings that could be achieved with utilizing the functions that the software we purchase has. So, for example, all of us get our paychecks. We get deposit slips mailed to us in the mail every week, right? And what it would do, the feature would be for the thousands of city employees, you get an email link, each week you get an automated email, click here, and if you want that based on, by all means, here it is and print it. If you want copies of your W-2s, you lost them, click here, print it. How is it, it's been a couple of years and we haven't been able to make some of these features that are, would simplify a workload? Where are we standing on moving this forward?
I think we're making progress towards that in Councilor. Through the mayor's leadership, we've enacted some additional platforms, which Munis always gave us the capability on, but we hadn't, as you said, we hadn't activated it, we hadn't pursued it. Some will give us a more decentralized opportunity so that departments will be entering their own payroll as opposed to municipal finance, which did about 70% of the payroll. Some of the bigger departments were able to do their own, like police and schools do their own. So we're getting a little bit more independent. We're also training people now to do accounts payable as which is another platform that wasn't activated. It was all centralized at municipal finance. That'll be decentralized now. Much of what needs to take place to make us better and make Munis help us better is training in IT. And Chuck Phelan has asked for an additional training addition to his budget, which the mayor has included in this, as well as a PC technician. So Munis is able to do more. It's going to cost us a little bit more to make it perform more. I think we'll be better in the end. We're making progress, more progress in the past year than we had in the previous 3.
I agree. I really think one things to step it up on our technological fronts and utilizing the tools that are out there. We're buying software, same thing, inspectional services software we've been talking about. It takes a long time to get online, and we're getting people up to speed on the utilization. There's a cost savings and there's a time savings and kind of quality of workload that you're able to achieve. And to me, let's use the technology that's out there. We'll all perform better. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Forrest. Motion on the floor made by Council Finn. Do we need a second to approve the budget? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Council King.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn. Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council LaForest.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calhoun. Chairman Poole.
Yes.
The motion passes on the municipal finance budget. Next item on the agenda is the Furnace Brook Golf Course, which appears to me to be funded as it was in the last fiscal year.
Motion to
Motion on the floor to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn. Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council LaForest.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Poole.
Yes. 7 votes in the affirmative. Councilor Finn.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to be recorded as yes.
On both matters, that would be the municipal, where you made the motion on that, so, and we just spoke about the Furnace Brook Golf Course.
So both.
Yep, I just want you to be clear. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Kavanaugh, is pensions.
The proposed pension funding request for the 2018 budget is $25,541,290. It's got less of an increase than previous years. One of the components of that is that the college will no longer be a portion of the city's contribution. Just used to be a flow-through. They would pay what they owed, but it would go through us and we would write the check. This year, well, in the upcoming year, they will fund directly with the retirement board, and the city will only have its own obligation. The actual factor involved in coming to the amount is called an appropriation split. It's done by state law on September 3rd, as of an employee count on September 30th of each year, and it's carried out through the retirement board and filtered over to us, and we supply the college.
So is that true by Derek? Is that where that comes from?
That's where it comes from.
That's where it comes from. Any discussion? Council Kane, did you have anything on that? No.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I'll ask you anyway. So with the pension contribution, have we made any thought or consideration to changing this from a defined benefit to defined contribution plan?
That's beyond what the municipal finance department of Quincy can do now. So I think you're talking about a relationship between government employees and cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth, state employees. I've heard talks about that, I've heard seminars about that.
So that's something that needs to be changed at the state level for it to be?
I believe it's all encompassing. I don't think you do one without the other, because they all become part of the same union. I think it's a big picture look. I'd be surprised if it was able to be accomplished individually, segmentized in
making individual contributions on behalf of our employees, correct?
Correct.
Which is how much per employee?
I don't know the exact figures on the match, and I'd have to refer to the retirement board on that. It's within that annual calculation that's made. We pay a percentage of the health care.
But that's an important number. I mean,
Oh,
that's what adds to this number that is growing at an
It's
increasing
the,
rate.
The combination of health care and pensions is the second largest piece of the budget
Right,
after schools.
right. So I'd be just curious to know how we're thinking about changing that to make it a lesser burden on our budget.
I think the focus to this point is to make sure we pay as we go and we don't fall behind.
Okay.
I think also on that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but when you consider, obviously, pensions and pension obligations, I would believe, although I don't have anything to back it up, but, the percentage allocated per participant through the retirement board is probably based on some year of service, right? The crediting rate, I would assume, is tied some way to length of service, right? So as you mature throughout your retirement glide path and get closer to generating a retirement paycheck, I would assume that that crediting rate increases. What I did in terms of reading on this, and this is where I need you to correct me if I'm wrong, I know that as a municipal employee, percentage of my check goes into retirement every pay cycle, right? So every week I pay X based on whatever our salary is here. And I know that, there's different breakpoints, right? So if you make X, you pay X. If you make Y, you pay Y. But where a lot of the kind of compounded interest or debt obligation had occurred was once upon a time, municipalities were essentially paying for the entire benefit. So there was no pay-go system where the employee or the participant in the retirement plan was contributing anything. And that liability, because that's what it is on the balance sheet, was essentially borne exclusively by the municipality. Is that correct?
You are correct. I believe it was the 1960s when it really came into vogue as far as an employee benefit to government workers. It started out low when we decided to have them make contributions. I can remember them fighting or arguing or voting to enact a 5% contribution rate. And many of our oldest employees who are still around, some still were at that rate. It's now climbed where the state employees hired today, I believe, are an 11% contribution rate, 11% of their salaries. Even ones that are lower, like 9% if they were hired years ago. Once you make over a certain amount, the amount increases for the contribution. So if it's over $50,000 or whatever the number is, I'm not up to speed on that, but it's an additional amount of money. I know that the current employees in city and state government have been paying for themselves for a number of years. There's no longer that segment that did not contribute enough in, but continue to take a considerable amount out. But we are still paying for a good segment of that. You might remember them as the greatest generation. When they came home from the service, they got government jobs, many of them, public safety employees. They're now on retirement, and they're taking out quite a bit more than they put in on a dollar-for-dollar basis.
Right. And the other side of that too is, right, so private sector, you pay into your social security benefits base. Public sector, there is no social security benefits base. So
Right.
your retirement destiny is contingent on, your ability to generate an income through a defined benefit or a pension.
Correct. Many of those people contributed to the social security system, but are unable to collect because you can only collect from one source. So they give up all the federal money that they paid in on other jobs.
But no question, every year I, take the time and read the, credit rating reports issued by, both agencies, S&P and Moody's, and, not common to just Quincy. I know some members of the audience have spoke about this at the public hearing, but, it is an issue for sure, and it's something that the credit rating agencies always take under advisement along with things such as stabilization. So, to Council Kane's sentiment, I think it's always, a challenge, a challenge to see how can we, further square up our debt obligations. And I would almost wonder, what a third-party consultant would have in terms of recommending, defunding strategies. I don't know that answer, but
I think there's a lot of innovative suggestions, especially for the younger generation, as they start to get involved. I hear a lot about mobile transparency and being able to take accounts with you to move people from public to private, back to public. And you take ownership and you have your retirement account on with you.
there is, there's
New ways of
hybrid plans that, allow you that portability, but still, that crediting rate that you enjoy under a defined, but different discussion for a different day. But I definitely do think it's something that we really should challenge ourselves to, understand, are we servicing this debt in the best way possible? Because, as much as we can all sit here and say, wow, it's a big number, it doesn't necessarily always matter what we think as a city council. It matters what the credit rating agencies who essentially, dictate what we can and can't borrow. What they say matters.
Correct, and they're always looking at it.
And they're always looking at it. So, Councilor Vaughn, you were waving at me. Saying aye.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to elaborate, what do other municipalities do in a situation where it looked like last year we got a $1.2 million increase, and this year it was about $491,000, which is less than half of last year's. I know the AA+ rating, we have to keep that. Is there any, give me the pros and cons on why or why not to bond and try to maybe, or are there other avenues of how do we decrease this amount, because it's adding every year?
You're talking about bonding for the pension obligation?
Not a good idea. No. And what if you're in a municipality like we are, where they're telling us we have to borrow?
The only instances where I've seen recommendations where states and some counties around the country have been forced, strongly encouraged to borrow to pay down that debt where they were nearly insolvent, where they had to come up with a plan, and they were allowed to sort of reorganize or maybe have another guiding financial force out making decisions for them for a period of time. So it's only when they're in dire straits when they go to that type of strategy. It's more of a long-term strategy. You never want to go below pay-as-you-go, which is paying our current obligation year after year. Nobody ever goes unpaid. We look at it as a long-term, 40-year obligation. It really doesn't have a finite end because in 10 more years, it's still going to be a 40-year obligation. So you want to make sure you have good policies and principles and investment strategies and keep up with it and contribute more when you can.
Somebody had suggested to me, you have to bond, why don't you just bond this down? Why don't you take a little bit off the 25.5 million that we have and bond it? And I said, well, I'll ask that question. And a lot of things I say up here, they're not originally from me, originally from the people on the street, people telling me, hey, listen, what about this question? And I said, so I asked it tonight. But what other avenues here do we have when we have, other people that come forward and saying, what are you going to do about the pension and retirement fund? And we get it every year.
It's a problem that has to be attacked over the long term, Counselor. It's not something that we're going to solve in the next 1, 2, or 5, or 10 fiscal years. It's a 40-year obligation that you recognize when you look at that number. So the 25 million that you see is a pay-as-you-go number. So we're just carrying on. And we've started a trust fund. It may seem very small, but at least in 6 figures. And if we get to the point where we double that trust fund amount, or ever find opportunities where we have any type of surplus or windfall, and we can triple that amount, we have to follow that pattern.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Good morning.
Councilor Vaughn. Councilor Harris.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
I have some motion on the floor to move approval of pensions. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor King. Councilor Vaughn.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor Hughes.
Yeah.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Poole.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, 7 members voting in the affirmative on pensions. The next item on the agenda, councilors, is Medicare.
The Medicare appropriation for 2018 is $2,292,629. That's an increase that's in keeping pace with the employment number and negotiated salaries anticipated for 2018 as the Medicare contribution is a factor off of that.
Any questions for Director Kavanaugh on Medicare?
Motion approved.
Okay, motion to approve made by Council Kane. Discussion on the motion. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Vaughn.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes. Yes. Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Cole.
Yes.
8 members.
8 members voting in the affirmative. The next item on the agenda is unemployment. Director Kavanaugh.
The unemployment compensation account is proposed $150,000. That would represent a $30,000 increase over the 2017 budget. If you'll recall, Mr. Chairman, councilors, the 2017 budget was reduced by $30,000. We had to get at the 150 level. It was reduced to 120, and we're now $20,000 in deficit for the current fiscal year. And the proposal is to get us back to 150 with the deficit going to year-end transfers.
Council Finn? Did you?
Excuse me?
Oh, I didn't know. No? Any questions?
Well, since we're on it, since I was going to make the cut, I wanted to point out that it was made based on the fact that it was so significantly lower than that other fiscal year. And we had essentially the same projection, not to make excuses. Are there any other offsets related to this or things that need to? No?
We do receive money from the college.
We receive how much? Yeah, so in terms of the college, how much do we get?
Right now, we're waiting for the treasurer's office to post, I think, about a little over $18,000 that they received, that was received from the college to cover their unemployment costs for 2 months.
So, again, you'll be landing in a good place. And your current projection's good, so let me have the honor of moving for passage.
Motion on the floor to move approval. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, we call the roll, please.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Vaughn.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes. Yes. Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Cole.
Yes. 8 members voting in the affirmative. The next item on the agenda, councilors, is the non-contributory. There's a motion on the floor to approve, made by Councilor Hughes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Vaughn.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Cole.
Yes.
8 members.
8 members voting in the affirmative. Next and last item on the agenda, Mr. Kavanaugh, reserved for appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reserve for appropriation to stabilization fund is $250,000 in 2018, the same as it was in 2017, as well as the reserve for the OPEB fund, trust fund, another $100,000 in that fund. And this continues the uphill fight. Doesn't solve the problem, it's just another brick in the wall.
Thank you, Mark.
Council Leeang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, I have a couple of questions for you. The first was just to get some clarification. So in the beginning of the budget book, there's a couple of paragraphs that explains the budget trends and talks about stabilization and what that trend looks like. And it touches on the $350,000 appropriation that's in front of us now. $250 going into stabilization, $100,000 going into OPEB. And then it talks about how that number gets to be decided on, and it's because you want to get between 5 to 6% of total general fund revenues, which under current revenues would be between 14 million and 17 million. Is that still correct?
Correct. Last year, when we had a full wallet, for lack of a better word, free cash, before any expenditures were made on that, we were able to combine, which they allow you to combine, free cash with your current stabilization fund, and that equals your total reserve. So I believe, as Mr. Powers pointed out, we were at about 15.5 million at the end of June last year. That worked very much in our favor. That was a balance in the accounts when the rating agencies gave us the AA+ stable rating. They encouraged us, as Mr. Powers continues to encourage us, and we're very well aware, we have to maintain and build upon those reserves. If the goal was ever for the city to achieve AAA status, we'd have to be in the mid-20s at least to be considered. So another $10 million from where we were last June. This may seem like a almost insignificant contribution, although I think if you add it up over time, it becomes significant. But this isn't the only contribution that will be made to both of those funds. As the body passed the formal financial policies a few months ago, that takes 50% of any free cash that gets certified and puts it into the reserves. So we could make another, whatever the free cash number is, another 20% contribution to the stabilization fund on top of this 250, another 20% contribution to OPEB on top of this 100, and then we'd still have 10% of the free cash required to go into the inclement weather fund, which is a very good idea considering we're coming off 2 winters of 41 or 46 inches. We went into deficit on both.
So what are we looking at for total stabilization fund for fiscal year 2018?
Pardon me?
What's the total that we're looking at that's going to be in our stabilization fund for 2018?
I didn't get it, I'm sorry.
The total amount on the stabilization fund?
It's 10.357 million right now.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back and ask the question again because I don't think I'm understanding this. In this book, it says that you're looking to make the stabilization fund between 5 and 6% of total general fund revenue, which is between 14 and 17 million.
Correct.
6% of 17 million, we're looking at a little over $1 million. So if our goal is $1 million, but we have 15, we're in a good place. So is this just written in here incorrectly? Am I reading this wrong? Or?
I don't know if you're reading it wrong, Counselor. I know that we had 15.5 million and we had hit our number last year in that 5% range. It's of general fund revenues, which last year was 278 million. So that's the number you'd be going off of, 5% of that, which puts us in that $15–16 million range.
I see, okay. No, I think I was just reading this incorrectly. So we're looking then to make stabilization close to 14 to 17 million? Is that
Not only stabilization, but free cash as well, yes.
And it's just the last question I had for you. So again, just referring to the budget report that gets sent over to us to review. The appropriation last year, then 250 for stabilization, 100,000 for OPEB. There's an amount that was transferred into another line item on here, 230,000, that just says unclassified. It says year-to-date expended has been 170,000, encumbrances 60,000. Can you just tell me what this is?
I can't off the top of my head. I'd have to research that.
Because it looks like the year-to-date expended for stabilization and OPEB is $0, but that 230,000 was spent for an unclassified line item. So again, I might be reading this incorrectly, but based off of this report that's in front of me, it says that the full 350, nothing was spent in stabilization or OPEB, but 230 was spent for an unclassified line item.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a story behind that. I just don't have it at the top of my head, Counselor, but I'll research it.
Council Leeang, excuse me, the auditor said that she had some contacts that she could provide to the conversation. So, Madam Auditor?
Yes, thank you, Councilor. The $230,000, which you see on the actuals, is at the end of the fiscal year, the council voted on 2 orders. One was for Tourism Discover Quincy, and the other was for the Quincy Historical Society. that quarterly payments be made. So this money here represents what was voted on at the end of last fiscal year, for fiscal year 17.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everything. Thanks.
You all set, Council? And Council DeBona?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to just elaborate on the fact that 2016 budget, we had 0. So there's nothing. And then 2017 budget, we put the stabilization at 250,000. The OPEB at 100,000. We're matching it this year. We're doing the same exact amount as last year. Is that correct?
We are doing the exact same amount. We didn't start with 0, though. This is an additional annual appropriation that the mayor wanted to begin making and hopefully grow into the future, knowing what the long-term problem is. We actually started the OPEB trust fund a few years back. I don't have it in front of me, but we started it with, I think, $1.2 million.
Okay.
And that was from a 10% appropriation of free cash.
So we're at least contributing to it, and I know
This is just adding on
added. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
And the stabilization was 5 to 6% of the overall budget, right? With the
5% of, yeah, general funding revenues, right?
with the stretch goal of 10%.
Yes, if
With
you
the
want to be
stretch
triple
goal
A.
of 10%.
If you want to be
Think
triple A.
big when it comes to savings.
That's
Right.
what
That was part of the conversation too. Get off my soapbox now. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion made by Councilor Kane. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, do you please call the roll?
Council King.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes. Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Crowe.
Yes. 7 members voting in the affirmative. Mark, always, thank you for coming. We'll see you again on Friday. Between now and then, you'll be able to get us out, a spreadsheet of sorts for your staff. Okay. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. We would welcome the treasurer collector, Deb Coughlin. Good evening, Deb. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and councilors. Okay, so the first budget we'll look at is the treasurer collector's department, and that's on page 13. It's fairly flat. I want to point out a few things. Obviously, the contractual obligations account for an increase of 38,000, but also, I'm sure you'll all know too, the communication budget was increased. We've had some significant mailings this year, I think with all the various projects and developments going on in the city. I'm seeing more and more board-wide mailings and so forth related in relation to those projects. So we've made a suggestion here to increase that budget in anticipation for next year. Right now, our expenditure is pretty low. Other years we've had a surplus, but we're pretty low in to spend between now and the end of the year.
Councilor Finn?
I'm sorry, I just missed. Are you referencing what were you suggesting in increasing?
The communication, which
Oh,
is,
okay.
sorry, I jumped down to the middle section. Everything else is fairly flat.
Just a slight, I motion, I make a motion to approve.
Motion approved. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, councilors. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Council King. Council DeBona. Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris. Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Crowe.
Yes. 7 yes? Yes. Okay, 8 members voting in the affirmative. Ms. Coughlin, the next item is tax title.
On the tax title budget, here we use, we account for the expenses associated with advertising and reporting tax liens for the city on undelinquent taxes. Also used in the past when we have had some auctions of the tax liens to a third party to facilitate recollection for the city. We're anticipating doing that next year. We did it 2 years ago and we were successful, but we do have still a number of properties sitting out there that need to be addressed.
Finn?
Thank you, Madam President. This was one of the items that we cut last year and we're restoring, but as we understand the actuals with this, what are you anticipating in the next 2 months? Do you see that that's going to be spent through, or?
Probably not in the next couple of months. We were hoping to get fiscal year 14 taxes reported, but we're still in the notification process on that, so realistically, I'm not sure we can get it all advertised and reported by the end of the fiscal
So
year.
generally, it's going to fall under that 30,000 mark that we set. And
Yes.
so, but are you anticipating something in terms of trends for next year that justify returning back to the 50 if this is more actual?
Well, we want to catch up on some of the other delinquent years. We're going to enter 14, I would like to very shortly do 15 and 16 as well. So we'll be advertising, reporting deeds for those. And if we were to, we're looking into now perhaps doing the auction again.
Which again would leverage additional revenue
Yes.
in the state.
Yes, it was pretty successful the last time. It's a pretty comprehensive process, but it did yield some very positive results in terms of the revenue collected.
All set, Council?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Motion approved.
Motion to approve by Councilor Kane. On the motion, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Bowman.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris. Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council Flores.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Cole. Seven members.
Okay, and there's positive recommendation. Thank you. Next up is debt service. No? What is it? Long-term debt service.
Okay, first, and it's on page 15. First, we'll look at the long-term debt, and for this last year, that's increasing by $2,889,000. And where we're seeing the increases are a couple of big items here. We have the first $10 million from the DIF that was bonded this year in January. So we had been rolling those DIFs by special legislation. We're allowed to roll those, renew those for 10 years. And now the first one was due in January. So we've added, some principal and interest there. The Woodward judgment, we have the first payment coming into next year's budget, so that's an increase. We have some IT upgrades that were approved in December, I believe, and then we bonded those in January. And there's also a number of short-term borrowings from last June that now have to be permanently financed. So we'll be bonding those in June, and that adds $2 million there. And there's an offset to that of almost $600,000, and that's related to some debt that has dropped off this year, debt service that has been fully satisfied, as well as changes in the debt schedules. Some of them go down a little bit over the year. So that's what accounts for the increase there.
Questions? Deb, I'm sorry, I stepped out and stepped back in. I'm assuming, but I never assumed, that what's contributing to the long-term debt was basically rolling bans that are now going out?
Yes, primarily that, yes. The DIF being a significant one, was $10 million, we talked about earlier when Jim Powers was here. And also, as I said, we have a number of bans from June that are due to be financed permanently. That includes the North Quincy High Campus, 5 schools where we replaced the windows under the MSBA programs. There were some traffic improvements in North Quincy, and then some other school and city building projects that we had initially funded through short-term borrowing, and now we have to permanently borrow.
Any questions for Councilman Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Mrs. Conklin. Thank you. Just a little bit on the Sterling Middle School. Is anything in here from that appropriation, I guess I could call it, or is it that in more of a short term?
It will be in short term.
It'll be in the short term. Okay.
Yes.
So, and then what it'll be, 1, 2, 3 year, and then you'll pick up the long term?
Yes, we can renew it. We just issued, it was January, we issued $7 million, so we'll renew that next year, and then we'll bond it the following.
Okay, I just wanted to see where that was at, but mostly, when the MSBA comes back and gives you the reimbursement, where does that fund go? Where does that funding go back to? Or how do you offset that? Because what you have to do is, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to bond it, but then the reimbursement comes back. How?
Slightly different than that.
Okay.
What we have to do is authorize the whole spending.
Okay,
So the council authorized the spending for the whole project. And then within the fund, as we're managing it, there are two sources of revenue to fund the project. It would be the MSBA portion and then the city's portion out of the bond proceeds.
okay,
So we don't borrow all that. We just borrow money along the way. So I looked to see what we needed initially, and we anticipate what we'll be getting back, because we know the percentage. And, we just try to make sure by the end of the fiscal year, we don't have a deficit there.
I also see here on 590151 interest long school, term schools, we had a decrease of $112,000 of interest.
Yes.
What is that caused from? Is it just over time?
There'll be a fluctuation in the debt service. As the bonds are paid down, there's a change in the interest.
And on top of all these, whether you bonded, are you refinancing any of these bonds? Or you say, listen, the rate is a little bit better, let's refinance this. Are you doing any of that?
No, we don't at this point. We usually rely on Cinder's Group for Southwest, that they would look at what bonds are eligible for that refinancing.
Okay.
So I don't think we've done that since 2015.
Okay. So that's where the peak was with the best rates, in 15.
They're able to look back at some of these bonds that were callable. You could call them and refinance.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Any further? No. Council Finn, there's a motion to move approval on the motion. Council.
Motion two, Mr. Chairman, quickly to the auditor. Most of these things are based on schedule, correct? Always okay. And you've had an opportunity to review these things, and you think they're fairly accurate?
Yes, I do. We just received a recent book from First Southwest that gives us all the debt schedules. And at that point in time, usually the treasurer's office, the finance office, and myself, we do go through it all three separately. And then we review it with each other to make sure that everybody's in agreement.
Thank you.
And there would, Council, there would be an estimate in there for the June bands that are going to be permanently financed, but we got some guidance from Cinder's Group in terms of what that would look like.
Great. Thank you.
All set, Council? The motion made by Councilor Hughes. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Council King.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Cole.
Yes. 8 members voting in the affirmative. Okay, the next item on the agenda, Ms. Kaufman, is short-term debt.
The short-term debt, we're seeing a slight decrease there of $364,000. Some of that is attributable to the fact that some items that we had on short-term bans last year, once we spoke about that, are now long-term bonds. So we had kind of a shift in the payments from one category to another. So one of the things being the June bans that I referenced before, where they're going to be permanently financed in June. That interest won't be there next year. It was $488,000 last year. The first $10 million that we banned for the DIF, that was almost $200,000. And then there are some new items we have in here, assumptions for that offset it to get into that number. We had, in September we had some CIP orders that were approved, and we did some borrowing on that, as well as the land acquisition that occurred down on Adams Street. So, there are some offsets to the decreases. We do have some new items in there. And one thing just to mention too, this goes back to the long-term debt. We do, from the hotel motel tax, have an offset of $630,000 against the long-term debt for a bond we currently have out there that had to do with recreation parks.
Is that the one that's coming due in like 2022?
Yeah, after this year, there's about another 7 years, and the latter part of that, it decreases down to about 250 houses, so at the end it'll be low. But at the end of it, I mean, the end of it is near.
Council Kane, did you have a question?
Nope.
No. Okay. Any questions for Council Finn?
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman, but again, through you, I just want to, with the auditor, in terms of the actuals that you provide, shows that to date, only about 54.7% of that has been utilized.
Correct.
And
Well, that's based on the debt schedule, so there'll be more payments that are due in, I believe, in June.
okay, so that goes, it's all scheduled for that.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks, that's all I just want to be
And
sure.
then, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Ms. Coughlin? Motion on the floor to move approval by Council Hughes. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Council King.
Yes.
Council Vaughn.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council Hughes.
Yes.
Council LaFars. Council Leeang.
Yes.
Chairman Coe.
Yes. 7 members voting in the affirmative. Deb, thanks again for coming out.
Yeah,
Nice to
have a good
see you.